So guys, coffee grounds are perfect to use in your garden, but you need to take a few precautions, and I'm going to go through the A to Z's on what you should do, what you shouldn't do, and the best way to use these coffee grounds, how to get them and make them last for a long time is a natural biological fertilizer that will not have any negative side effects to your garden if you use it the right way. So guys, coffee grounds make the perfect fertilizer when used properly. They contain nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and even trace minerals. So that's even a more important thing that you don't get in some fertilizers. So just remember, by using these coffee grounds, you're preventing them from ending up in landfills, which take up massive amounts of space. You'd be amazed at how many tons and tons of coffee grounds end up in landfills across the world each year. So just remember, if you go to your local coffee shop and ask them, they most probably, at the end of the day, will give you quite a bit of coffee grounds, which is basically free fertilizer. So guys, one of the first ways I used coffee grounds in my vegetable garden is to do a light dusting around the base of your vegetables, and it really helps. But it doesn't give them the nitrogen instantly, but it will break down over time. And there's a lot of added benefits to that as well. But I'm going to go through each step along the way, showing you how to use it in your vegetable garden, your house plants, and even your shrubs around your house. So guys, after some straining to pick this up and bring it inside the greenhouse because it's rather windy out today and I don't have my special mic that will block out a lot of that wind noise. So anyways, I want to show you a homemade composter. It's super simple to do, costs about $25 to $30 depending on how much you'll pay for this trash can. But anyways, it's really easy to make. I'm going to link a video up above that shows you how to make one of these. But adding your coffee grounds directly to your compost is probably one of the most effective ways to integrate the coffee grounds into your vegetable garden. So most people's concerns about using coffee grounds in their garden or house plants or their shrubs around their house is they're afraid that the coffee grounds are extremely acidic and they can damage the plants unless they're an acidic loving plant like blueberries or azaleas. But they're really not that acidic. They're around 6.8, which is almost perfectly neutral. And so there's no worries about extreme acidity being added to your soil because, like I said, they're mostly neutral. Also, the acidity that are in coffee beans ends up in your cup. So that's another thing just not to worry about is the acidity levels in the used coffee grounds. Now, we'll talk later about unused coffee grounds in the garden as well. Now, one cautionary statement is never add large amounts of coffee grounds to the base of your plant because that can dry and form a thick mat. Like let's say you got 1/2 inch to 1 inch of coffee grounds in a large area around the base, circular base of your plant. That's going to cause a problem because when they dry out and then you go to water next time or it rains or irrigation hits it, the water will run away from the root system and it could kill your plant. So there is a possible total destruction of your plant by using coffee grounds if you do that. But most people don't. Most people don't have access to that much coffee grounds, at least not right away. But over time, if you keep adding them directly to the soil, that can happen. And that goes back to what I said earlier about using your composter. And I'll show you another way to decompose them quickly, and it will benefit another video that I made earlier, and I'll link that as well. But let me get to that right after this. Now, as you add the coffee grounds to your compost, don't consider them a brown. If you do a lot of composting, you'll know what I'm talking about. Compost is built up of greens and browns, and most people think of green as being your nitrogens, but actually coffee grounds are considered a green, even though the color is brown, because they do contain nitrogen. So just remember, as you're layering it, you're going to have a layer of dried leaves or chopped up leaves, and then you'll consider this your green, then another layer of brown. But one thing to remember is you want to make sure that you water it in well so that biological action can happen. Your microbes and whatever bacteria you have in there will help break down your coffee grounds and the nitrogen can become more usable to your plants. Now, I did mention about getting free coffee grounds from your local coffee shop, and some coffee shops will even have a bucket somewhere near the register giving away coffee grounds for your composting. So that's a really nice thing that some coffee shops do. But if they don't have something like that, you can ask the manager what time do they throw out their coffee grounds and would you mind me having some? So a lot of times they're more than happy to give them to you because to them it's just waste. So just remember that at the end of the day, you're more likely to get a larger volume of coffee grounds, especially on a weekend when more and more people are visiting the coffee shop. Now, in addition to using it in your regular compost bin, you can use it in your vermicomposter, which is basically just a worm composting system. I made this one recently in a video, and I'll link it up above showing you exactly how to put it together. It's super simple. Again, it's not expensive, but it will be one of the best things you can do for your house plants, vegetable garden, even the shrubs around your home. So I had mentioned earlier about putting a light dusting of the coffee grounds at the base of your plants, but there's probably some negative side effects to that. So it's going to definitely be better to do either vermicomposting or standard composting of your coffee grounds. You can put a light dusting and that's fine, but if you're planning on adding a lot of coffee grounds, do your composting methods first and then add it to the soil so you don't run into issues with your plants, shrubs, house plants, whatever it is you have. Now, another danger in adding coffee grounds, a lot of them in your garden, is for pets. Dogs might actually try to eat the coffee grounds, or cats might decide to leave you some free fertilizer and dig around in the coffee grounds and then lick their paws. So it could be a very negative things for your pets to get into. So just remember, it's better to do the composting and not direct add if you have a lot of pets around your garden. So if you have an acid-loving plant such as blueberries or azaleas, adding coffee grounds that haven't been used would be great for your plants because there's a lot more acidity in it, and it will definitely help them. But most vegetables don't want to have that much acidity. Slightly acidic, yes, but a lot of acidity and unused coffee grounds is not a good idea. But like I said, blueberries and azaleas, yes. Now, there is some debate about adding a dusting of coffee grounds around the soil in your garden so they can repel insects. That may or may not be true. I've never tested it. I've never read a lot of documents saying that it does do that. So that's kind of a iffy thing if you think it's going to repel insects. But one thing that a lot of people say that coffee grounds will repel slugs and snails, it doesn't. There's some videos on the internet that show slugs crawling right over the coffee grounds. So that is not true about coffee and slugs and snails. Maybe if it hasn't been brewed and maybe there's a lot of caffeine, like a high potency caffeine, maybe that would work. But as far as I know, I've never seen any actual videos that showed a slug or snail trying to crawl across coffee grounds and it's stopping them in their tracks. So that's really just a myth. So even though there is nitrogen in the coffee grounds, it's not immediately available to your plants. So you'll need to put it in your composter, or if you put it directly at the base of the plant, a small amount, it's going to take a while for the microbes to break that down so the nitrogen is available for your plant. So just remember, it's good not to stop your normal fertilizing schedule thinking that the coffee grounds are going to take the place of your fertilizer. Just remember, that's a very slow process and it can take up to 6 months for the coffee grounds to be turned into that nitrogen that your soil will eventually put into your plants. Now, putting large amounts of coffee grounds at the base of the tomato plant is not a good idea. There's been some studies that show that using a lot of coffee grounds on tomatoes can actually stunt their growth. So generally, tomato plants do not like a large volume of coffee grounds unless you composted them first. So if you have an extremely high caffeine level in the coffee brand you use, you can actually brew the coffee and use the liquid as an insecticide to spray directly on some pests in your garden. Now, as I was showing you earlier about the vermicomposter or the worm composter, some people say that coffee grounds will kill earthworms, and that is not true unless you're trying to have a worm composter with pure coffee grounds. Yes, that will kill the earthworms, the red wigglers, whatever you have in there. So you don't want to try to have a worm composter with pure coffee grounds, but you can add some in there and it won't hurt them at all. They'll actually thrive on them. Now, this is my poor man's seed starter system here, and I've got a video I'll link above that show you how to use it. But the reason I'm taking this off the garden shelf for right now in the greenhouse is I want to say that never put coffee grounds anywhere. Sprinkle, dust them, the liquid of the coffee, never near your seedlings because it can harm them. So you just want to keep these two separated unless you've already went through that 6 months process of breaking down your coffee grounds in the composter. Then it would be safe. But remember, directly from the raw coffee, even the grounds, you don't want to put that anywhere on your seedlings. Additionally, someone had asked me about coffee grounds and seeds. Yes, the same way with seeds. You don't want coffee grounds and seeds mixed. You want to keep them totally separated, as it will affect the seeds and they probably will never sprout. Now, even though coffee grounds contain nitrogen, they're not going to replace your standard fertilizer, whether you're using organic or non-organic fertilizer. So just remember, the levels in the coffee grounds are too low and they're not balanced enough to use as fertilizer. So this is more of a supplemental method that's going to help boost your vegetables or house plants to a healthier state. Now this year I'm going to try something new with my vegetable garden. Come springtime, I'm going to allot some plants. I'm going to try to make a coffee ground tea. The way you do this, I read it in a blog article, is you fill a 5-gallon bucket almost to the top and add about 1 cup of used coffee grounds to it. Then stir it every other day and wait about 1 week before you add it to your plants. I'm going to only do that on a limited basis because this is something new to me, but I thought I'd pass it on. Another note about these buckets, if you live anywhere near a Firehouse Subs, you can buy these buckets for $3, including the lid, which is about half the price from the big box store, and it goes to a good cause as well. Now, if you want to make sure there's no pesticides or herbicides in your coffee grounds, then I recommend starting your coffee grounds with a organic ground coffee, and then that way you know 100% there's no chance of any of those being in the final ground. Now, different coffee grounds may have a different pH reading, and you can test that really easy with a pH meter. I'll link one in the description below. But if you are buying maybe an unusual blend of coffee, maybe the pH would be lower than normal, so you can test it pretty easily by just sticking this pH meter in there and seeing what the actual pH of the coffee grounds are. Now, since coffee grounds are something we throw away on the common every week, there's something else that I recently made a video about, and that's using eggshells. Instead of throwing them away, you can turn them into a really, really potent fertilizer. I'll link that above, and it's really something unusual that if you'll just go through that process, you'll have an additional item to add to your garden instead of just coffee grounds. So when my wife moved to America from Japan, she bought one of these with her, and I'd never actually seen one. I'm sure they're around and they're very common for some people, but for me, I've always used either the drip or the K-cups, and so this is something completely unique. I'll give you a close-up of exactly how it works. So this may be the most simplistic coffee maker ever thought of, but basically you're just taking the coffee, putting it in a filter. On the bottom of this cup, there are holes to allow it to drain into your coffee cup. You put your grounds in the top cup, put your hot water on it, and it slowly drains into your cup. So it's just an interesting and very simple way to make coffee if you don't have electricity, you're camping or whatever. As long as you can get access to hot water, you can make a great cup of coffee very easily. So if you're interested in one of these cups, they're not expensive at all, and I'll link one in the description as well. So guys, I hope you found this interesting about coffee grounds. It's just a way to recycle something you're going to normally throw in the trash, and it'll prevent it from ending up in the many, many landfills across the world. So if you liked what you saw, please like and subscribe, and I really appreciate the comments down below. I always read them and always get something out of them one way or the other. So have a great day, guys.